technique because Mr. Parsons' art tells you all that you need to know in terms of what's going on in the story. Even on the first page where you get the text boxes, you're not reading from right to left and up and down. The text boxes follow the flow of the art. So you're reading the text in such a way that it feels like you're actually climbing down a circular staircase. And that gives a really ominous feeling as you see the scene shift from surface level to underneath the surface of the earth. Really great opening story. All right, moving on to the second story, we have the Monks of Ral Vupaka, written and illustrated by Shane Heron, one of the publishers and co-editors of the book. And in the story, we see a battle between two groups. One appears more humanoid than the other. They appear to be an elven people, and they're fighting against an order of monks who look somewhat humanoid, but from my perspective are quite alien. It turns out that over the course of the battle, the monks have captured the Elven King's beloved, maybe his consort, his wife, his queen, but the king is determined to make his way into the monk's stronghold and free his beloved. And when he does this, his reunion with his betrothed is very short-lived, as the monks have done something quite awful and quite terrifying as well. And so there is a battle that goes on within the stronghold, and the Elven King has to make a very difficult decision. Some very powerful art here by Shane Heron. As in the first story, we do get an element of the grotesque, which is entirely fitting for this type of story. Certainly with a story like this, you don't want to have really neat, clean, cheery looking art. Mr. Heron does a great job of conveying the mood of this story, captures the violence that is the conflict between the two warring sides. But what I really appreciate is that Mr. Heron is so great at drawing facial expressions on the characters, especially when it comes to the king. You can see on his face where he's emoting, so there's the sense of determination, of hope, but you can also see the fear when he realizes what has been done to his beloved. And then when he has to make that very difficult decision in the end, you can see the adrenaline running throughout him, the determination. You can also see stoicism while he is feeling, no doubt, a fair amount of grief here. And Mr. Heron captures that so brilliantly in the last page, because when it comes to kings and generals, leaders of whole societies, yes, they have to look like they're people, but at the same time, they have to be on a separate level. So, they have to show that they have a certain level of detachment, almost, in order to appear strong and to inspire their followers. But you have to know that on their own, they're going to see horrible things, and they're still going to feel it, especially when those horrible things involve those who they love. I was really drawn especially to the last panel in this story. Much like the first story, A King's Heart, Mr. Heron goes with a silent approach towards the end of the story, and the art is just brilliant here. And you don't need text boxes, you don't need inner monologue or other word balloons. You get the story and the impact that it has on the protagonist quite clearly from looking at the art. All right, and now for the third story, which is titled The Sun Rises on Edo. Writer is Sam Noir. The artist is Robert Friedman. Colors by Matthew Tavares. And you may recognize Mr. Tavares' name. He is the artist on the Victorian Four, which I understand there's going to be a new issue coming out in the not-too-distant future. What really takes me back with this story is when I was in university, I took a year-long Japanese history course. And for me, one of the highlights of that course was looking at Japan during the mid-1800s, period when the Americans tried to invade Japan, and Japanese actually successfully appealed to the would-be invaders and said, no, please go away. We know that we look quite different to you, but if you give us some time when you come back, you'll see that we are a very enlightened society. And so during that time of reprieve, Japan underwent this incredible revolution, socially, politically, economically, so that when the Americans returned, Japan looked rather westernized in a number of ways. And this is seen as one of several high points in Japanese history. But at the same time, it's important to consider the fact that revolutions can be great in some cases, very necessary, but they don't benefit everybody. So here in this story, we see two sides to the community that is Edo. You see on the one side those who have become quite wealthy, quite prosperous, and on the other side you see those who live in poverty. They're living in slums with next to nothing. And those who are living in poverty, they're also the ones who are breaking their backs, risking their lives, working where they can, and their efforts really end up supporting those who have in the society. So this is a backdrop of a story about the arrival of a kaiju monster who comes out from the ocean to attack Edo, and the only person who is able to possibly stop the kaiju monster's rampage is an elderly blind woman. And it appears that all she can do, outside of wave her stick, is talk to the beast. And it's fascinating to see the discussion which she has, because it gives us a very important revelation into the exact nature of this kaiju monster. This isn't your straight up B- sci-fi movie monster. There's something very compelling about this creature. And so yes, it's very horrific and its rampage is horrific, but at the same time, you do feel a considerable level of sympathy, not just for the elderly woman who's confronting this monster, but you also feel sympathy for the monster as well. And you kind of find yourself saying, as the story goes along, yeah, I support the kaiju in this case. This is actually a really cool story, because, in a lot of stories involving creatures that come out from the ocean or from beneath the surface of the earth, they're the villains through and through, and you're cheering on the humans. But that's a neat twist with this story. You're left saying, okay, are the people who appear to be innocent really all that innocent? Who are the ones who we should feel sympathetic for? Just a trademark, a hallmark of Sam's writing career is that he writes these deceptively simple one-and-done stories where there's always this really great twist near the end that changes the entire meaning of the story. Full disclosure here, folks, outside of watching Pacific Rim and making the glorious mistake of seeing the premiere of the 2000 version of Godzilla starring Matthew Broderick, I've never really been into movies featuring kaiju monsters. And I was speaking to Sam about this at Comic-Con, and he reminded me that movies like Godzilla were done in the context of Japanese people recovering from the atomic bombings at the end of World War II. Those bombings didn't just affect Japan and its people physically. The bombing also affected the people spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. And so here we get very much a powerful psychological story here. Some really great artwork by Robert Freeman. The artwork, the colors really pop. And again, like the two stories that have preceded it, Sam gives us a good amount of text and dialogue in the first 2-3 pages of the story, but then he also knows when to let Mr. Freeman's art tell the story, and so you can just take in the artwork, and it's just beautiful. Both the art and the story, it's a perfect marriage, and they tell you the tone of the story, how the characters are feeling quite clearly. A really powerful ending to this first issue. And then in the back matter, we get a couple of pages of preview art for upcoming stories in future issues of Cauldron. There's Haunted Memories by artist Jason Tokowitz, with colors by Keith Grachow, and Keeper by artist Locke Nguyen. Even the back cover has full art by R.B. White. Beautiful first issue from cover to cover. Now, for a look at the spring 2019 issue of Cauldron, and I picked up my Kickstarter reward copy at Comic-Con, and then I was at a book signing with Sam and 3 of the other co-creators for Cauldron, and I picked up a second copy of Cauldron, which was great. This second issue actually introduces us to a character who's going to appear in the first page of all issues of Cauldron going forward, the Dweller in the Cellar. He appears to be rather dangerous sort of person. I think he's got a fair level of contempt for other living beings, and he's going to be our crypt keeper, if you will, for this magazine. I think that's really nice that there's going to be this character who we're going to see at the start of each issue going forward. And that one page introducing a Dweller in the Cellar is written by Sam Noir, with art by Robert Freeman and colors by Jeffrey Miles. We get this one really nice pinup page titled Kaiju. Breathtaking art done by Locke Nguyen. Really, really captivating. And then we get into our first story for this issue. It is the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. And this is actually taken from